Welcome back to another video, and today we are talking about comics, but to be more specific, we are talking about Chip Zdarsky's run on Daredevil. So I recently finished this entire run a couple of weeks ago, and it's been on my mind a lot here lately, and I just wanted to make a video talking about why I loved this run so much and why it's one of the best Marvel runs that you can read right now. So this is my first time reviewing a full comic run on this channel, and I'm honestly a little stumped with how to do this video because a comic run is just so massive and it can be overwhelming when it comes to talking about it because there's just so much to talk about. But I wanted to try to do this video anyway because I just love Daredevil so much. He's probably a top 2 superhero for me only behind Spider-Man. And I really enjoyed this run, so in this video I will be discussing what makes this run so special and why I think you should read it. So let's start the video off with why I decided to read this particular run of Daredevil. I've always been a big fan of Daredevil and Marvel Comics, and this year I've been on this journey through the world of comics. And what I mean by that is that I've been getting more into a wide variety of comics here lately, and I've been wanting to read more of what people consider to be the greats. And Daredevil always ranks very highly on everybody's list. So I decided to check out Zdarsky's run. I've always heard great things about Zdarsky's run, and before I read any of this, I thought it had a lot of unique and interesting stuff that looked very cool, such as Elektra's taking on the mantle of Daredevil while Matt's in prison for a murder. Daredevil at his lowest point and battling a lot of his Catholic guilt and discovering what it truly means to be Daredevil. I always see people share, like on Twitter and stuff, cool Daredevil suits that was introduced in Zdarsky's run, like Elektra's Daredevil suit, the King Daredevil suit, and the Hand of God suit. So I figured now would be a great time as any to dive headfirst into this, and boy was I right to do so. Because I believe this run is not only one of the best Daredevil runs that I've ever read, but I also just think it's some of the best comics that you can read right now. So let's talk about why this run is so great, and a lot of it has to do with the man responsible for that, and that is Chip Zdarsky. And he brought his A game when writing Daredevil, because this is just one of the best written Daredevil runs ever, and it's also one of the best written comic runs that I've ever read. And I've read a lot just in this year alone for comics, and I want to discuss a few key story arcs that are present within this run. I won't be able to cover every single story arc that is present here because if I did, this video would be over an hour long, and I want to keep this video at a decent and watchable length. So let's start off with the opening story arc, and that is No Fear. Our story begins with Matt Murdock's return to crime fighting after a near death experience, only to be framed for a death he claims that he didn't cause. While recovering physically, Daredevil grapples with his own violence and the fear that he's becoming the very villain he fights against. This was just a very short summary. I want to try to avoid spoilers as much as I can. Um, but No Fear was a great way to open the story, and it gets you reacquainted with Daredevil. It's a great reintroduction to Daredevil, and it has a murder mystery type feel to the story. I love how this story made me feel throughout reading it, because anyone who knows anything about Daredevil would know that Matt would never kill anybody because of his religious beliefs that anyone can be saved regardless of the crime or what they do. And also, he just knows how to knock people out in a certain way without killing them. But it makes you feel as if Daredevil was set up by someone like the Kingpin or maybe some sort of new threat that's going to be introduced. Or maybe Matt finally let the devil out and just snapped on somebody. It was a really great story arc, and it also introduces a new character that adds a lot to the story, and that is Cole North. Now, you might be familiar with him from the Daredevil Born Again Disney Plus show, uh, but in that show he was restructured to be something totally different, but he still carried the name. But Cole North is a detective that I believe was sent from Chicago to Hell's Kitchen to clean up some of the crime, and he has a vendetta against vigilantes, and he clashes with other characters like Daredevil and Spider-Man. He's one of the highlights in this run for me because he brings a lot to the story, and he brings a lot to the Daredevil mythos, and one of he's one of the best supporting characters that the series has had. But overall, it's just a solid reintroduction to Daredevil and a great introduction to the story. The following issues after are just as great because we see Matt quit being Daredevil for a good portion of the story, and we get to see him at his lowest point in his crime fighting career, with his faith being tested and questioning if Hell's Kitchen even needs a Daredevil. I like how in the following issues, Daredevil becomes a sort of a symbol to the people of Hell's Kitchen, and this marks Matt's triumphant return as Daredevil, which was awesome to see, and it really paid off seeing Matt back in the Daredevil suit. Another major story arc that I'd like to talk about is something that happens halfway through the run, and that is Devil's Reign. Devil's Reign is not only a Daredevil story, but it's also a major Marvel Comics event that brings in a lot of characters from the Marvel Universe, such as Spider Man, the Fantastic Four, Captain America, Iron Man, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones. This story opens with Wilson Fisk, the current sitting mayor of New York City, using his political power to enact the Powers Act, which is a law that's passed that outlaws vigilantes in New York City, and he wages a war on all superheroes. And I just thought this was a good event, and it was a good halfway point in the run. It kept things fresh. Kingpin is just one of the best and most threatening Marvel villains, up there with other villains like Doctor Doom and Magneto. I think Devil's Reign does a good job with showcasing how threatening he can be, not just towards Daredevil, but towards the entire Marvel universe. And he's just a top three Marvel villain for me. So I just love whenever he's the center of attention for anything. I really like seeing Daredevil interact with other Marvel characters that you don't see all too often, like Captain America and the Fantastic Four. You can see a lot of inspiration that the Daredevil Born Again series took from Devil's Reign, like Kingpin becoming mayor of New York and outlawing vigilantes, and what's about to happen in season 2 of that show, like Daredevil leading a resistance against the Kingpin. I also really liked how Kingpin gave Elektra's file to Craven the Hunter in the story. I like the pairing of these two characters each other because we each have like the world's deadliest hunter versus the world's deadliest assassin. And I just think Craven works really well being pitted up against Daredevil, and honestly makes for a really good Daredevil villain. The only issue that I have with Devil's Reign is that I feel like the main event could have went on a little longer, maybe like two more issues. But other than that, I thought it was a pretty good event. And now we have our final story arc for this run, and that is the Red Fist saga. And this is a pretty hefty story arc spanning a full 12 issue series. This story follows Daredevil and Elektra as they get married and become king and queen of an ancient ninja organization called the Fist, which is a counterpoint to the Hand. They raise an army of reformed villains and take the fight to the Hand and its new leader, the Punisher. And I've never really been a big fan of the Hand in the Daredevil mythos. I've always liked Daredevil for more the grounded street level stuff, but I really like this story arc and a lot of the things that Zdarsky introduced, like how Daredevil and Elektra take part of this ancient ritual and get married to become King and Queen Daredevils. I just love the design of how the King Daredevil suit looked because it just has so much aura. I mean, guys, like it's unreal with just how much aura this guy has. And I've never been a fan of the Hand, but Zdarsky actually made me like the Hand, and he made a really cool story arc here and just a good conclusion to the run. Overall, this run has some pretty incredible story arcs that span from street level to a more ancient mystical level world ending threat. I think most of these stories are pretty well paced and an entertaining read. Zdarsky proved to me that he was a really good writer for Daredevil. So let's move on because I got to talk about the art here because this comic features some pretty great art by Marco Cicchetto. and I think I'm pronouncing his name right, but I'm going to say it like that anyway. So Marco Cicchetto is one of the best artists at Marvel right now, and also just one of the best modern comic book artists in the industry right now. He's done most of the art for this run, and I did say most, not all, because he wasn't able to illustrate everything. Because where this is a comic run that comes out on a monthly basis, it would be challenging for him to illustrate like 60 some issues back to back. So there are some backup artists in this run, and some of them are really good. I wouldn't say not all of them are up to par with Chichetto's art, but whenever he does illustrate a page, it will absolutely blow you away with how breathtaking it looks. As you're reading this, you will stop and appreciate the page and really soak in all the amazing art you see before moving on to the next page. I like how his art has a sense of grittiness and detailed realism to it, and that just makes it a perfect fit for Daredevil and the tone that these issues are going for. I love how Chichetto illustrates certain things like Daredevil's radar sense and how he shows Matt Murdock's perception of the world around him due to him being blind. I think Zdarsky and Chichetto were a perfect fit together here because because of how well the art just complements the story and vice versa. This is just one of those comics that I regularly pick up off my shelf and I flip through some of the art just because of how great it is. And before we wrap up the video, there is one last thing that I'd like to talk about. And this is what's going to make Zdarsky's run so memorable for me. And maybe even the best idea that this run introduced, and that is Elektra taking up the mantle as Daredevil. And I always kind of had mixed feelings on Elektra prior to reading this. Like, I didn't hate Elektra, but I didn't exactly love her either. But I do love what Zdarsky done with her in this though. Zdarsky takes Elektra and gives her the spotlight and as the new Daredevil. And this was just a cool thing to do with the character because of how it's just a total flip from what we're used to seeing with Elektra. And how this happens is about 28 issues in, Daredevil is sentenced to prison for the murder of a criminal, but Elektra takes up the mantle of Daredevil to prove to Matt that she can fight for justice without killing. Elektra becoming Daredevil marks a major change in her character because she goes from ruthless assassin to a hero, and it's just great character development and a great change for her character. And I also just love how her Daredevil costume looks. I just love everything about this costume, especially how it's a blend of her iconic ninja look and with the Daredevil costume. I think it's also cool how she uses her signature twin size with the tips filed down, similar to Daredevil's Billy Club. I just thought that was really cool. And after I went and read this run, I actually went and ordered a statue of Elektra as Daredevil because of how much I just loved her in this run. Daredevil by Chip Zdarsky is just such a banger. I love this so much, and it's quickly entered my all-timer list. I definitely think this run will have a lasting impact on me, and I can definitely see myself rereading this run sometime in 2026. I highly recommend this to any newcomers who may be curious about Daredevil, or anybody who may want to jump into comics but don't know where to start. But I want to know what you guys thought about this run. If you've read it, let me know down in the comments what you thought about it. Also, tell me what your favorite Daredevil run is. Are you a fan of Frank Miller or Brian Michael Bendis? Um, let's get a good discussion going in the comments and be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Until next time.